every time I try to record. And my hair is doing crazy things again today. All right, guys. Hey, this is Hey everybody, it's Aquila and this is a Lefty Knitter podcast. Today is Saturday, June 20th. This is the only clip I have today, so I'm gonna start the clip and end, episode, I guess. Episode 70. I'm pretty sure. It's gonna be just the one clip today, so I apologize. It's been a very heavy week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I have some knitting done, and I want to talk a little bit about catching floats in color work, because I have some examples to show you there too. So I'm going to first just start off with you can find me at all the links down below on Instagram, Ravelry. We have a group. We also have a cowl going right now, which is the Birthstone cowl, and that's Birthstone cowl 2020. You knit with the color of your birthstone. Now, if your birthstone is like diamond, I understand that's a little harder because it's white. Some people have gotten very creative. They have sparkly yarn. They have yarn that's named after like real birthstones, so it's really cool. You have 2 months. It just started, so you have almost another, I think it's 2 months. Now I'm questioning myself. Yes. 2 months, so it's not even a full month through, so you have plenty of time. You have to use at least 75% of your yarn should be the color of the birthstone that you're making. The project should have 75%. That's where I'm getting with this. I can't win. So John took Hazel so he could open up the gate so a guy could bring a crane in. So I'd have time to myself. It doesn't happen. I am doing the moho shawl for this cowl. Oh, I meant to mention that there will be 2 prize winners drawn from the FO thread, and each one of those will get one $40 gift certificate to either Fully Spun, which is Brooke, or Rising Tide Fiber Company. Now I want to say Lisa, and I think that's not right. I don't know why my brain is not functioning today. Moho Shawl by Christopher Salas is what I'm using. I told you about my flub up in the last episode, so if you didn't see that, I'll just recap very shortly here. I thought it said 171 stitches, and I increased all the way to 150 something before realizing it was only 117. Whoops. So I ran out of yarn. That's okay. I'm using Brooke's yarn, Fully Spun yarn bag. Here's the bag. And this is the super green in the fingering weight. All right, bud, you gotta go. Sorry. I ran out. I got really far and I used every last bit. I went one more row with it, which I was nervous about, but it got me. This is all I had. Well, I've already tied in the next color. I only had like the tiniest bit left. It'll be enough to weave in. So the next color I picked, because I wasn't sure what I was gonna do, is On the Round. This was one of her red line. I don't know what she calls them. She does a sale. It's the ones that aren't exactly perfect. So I don't know what was not perfect about this, but I love it. I've used it in my Sunset Highway sweater. And this is called Greenery. Now, I'm trying to think, is it Peridot? Is the other birthstone that's green? It's a lighter green, so it's not quite emerald, which is my birthstone. But I think it matches really well. You have to disregard all the cat hair that is currently in this project. I don't have markers because, again, I am terrible at that. I think this is the front side. Not quite sure if it matters so much. So Brooke's yarn is like a gradient. It's dyed in the wool and then spun at a mill per her specs. So I got pretty far. See, this is where it starts to change. You increase all the way to here, and now I'm going just straight across. So the stitch count remains the same, which is nice. But it will, this section gets smaller, this section gets wider, because you're then only increasing on this side, and there's still a decrease in there somewhere. So it makes it the same amount of stitches. And here is that green that I tied in. I like it. I think it looks really cool with it. It's not exact and it's not perfect, but this was left over and I knew I would have enough of this to get me to the end of this shawl. And I like it. I didn't want black and I didn't want something just like crazy, like hot pink. I wanted something to kind of tie in, and green, of course, it's my favorite color anyway, so. I love the smell of woolly, sheepy wool. Sheepy smell. It smells so good. All right, so that's the moho shawl. The only project I have going right now is the Once in Floral sweater by Maxim Sear. I showed the yarn. I'm using Jamieson Smith 2-ply jumper weight. It's in my pass bag. Hazel and I started reading The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the original, written in like 1900. I think it was like 1901 maybe. It's a long time. And so I bought the book for us to read together at night. And now he's using the litter box. I think I'll pause and let him finish. Okay, he's done his business. We can proceed. Okay, I'm using the Jamieson and Smith, the 2-ply jumper weight. I was right on that. There's the label. I have a gray, a red, like a dark red, and a cream color, like a natural. I showed the start of this last episode, and I've now gotten into my third color. So let me try to untangle this mess, because, you know, you stop a color, you start a color. This is sticky woolly wool, and I love it. I've not used a whole lot of sticky woolly wool. Like, it grips, it catches, because with superwash wool, which you probably already know this, maybe you don't, you could be a newer knitter. If it's a superwash wool, it goes through some sort of chemical processing, or I don't even know if it's chemical or if it's a manufactured processing. So I thought he was getting in the litter box again. When you have a strand of wool, you're not gonna be able to see this. It's microscopic, right? So you have your strand of wool, and the hairs that come from the animal have tiny little fish hooks on them, like super tiny hook type things in the yarn. So when they put it through the process to make it a quote unquote superwash wool, it removes all those little hooks. Imagine all these little hooks, and it strips them. So you get this nice, smooth, soft yarn. Not that regular yarn that's not superwash is not soft, because it is. But so when you use a superwash wool, it's intended that you can throw it in the wash and not felt, because you don't have all these little hooks all over doing this, grabbing each other and felting together and making a felted fabric. So this is a not superwash. So when I'm like picking up one color and the other color, because I throw both my colors, I am not good at using one color in each hand. So I'm a thrower and I throw both of my colors, so I'm constantly picking up one color versus the other color. Sometimes it gets like stuck together. Like, see how grippy that is? Like if it was like a superwash, that wouldn't grip like that as much. So just a little thing on that. So these are toothy. You'll hear podcasters say they're toothy, or you'll hear people call it a toothy yarn. It's toothy because it has those little tiny teeth or fish hooky type things, and it grips. The more you know. All right, now that I've went on that rant, okay. So this is the top, and this is the bottom. Well, this is the live stitches. So that'll be the collar, and I'm getting into the flowers. I probably should show a picture of it real quick, what it looks like, just so you have a quick idea. There you go. So his white flowers are my red flowers. So I want to talk a little bit about floats. I knew about floats when I first started doing any color work, and there's some projects where you won't ever have to catch your floats. So when you're knitting, and say your chart has 5 stitches of white and then 4 stitches of red and then goes to the next color, I do not typically go over a 5-stitch wide float, or 6. There's one in here that I did a 6, and there's reasons why I did that. You want to catch your float, say you have an 8 stitches wide of one color, you want to catch that float. Whether you catch it 4 and 4 or 3 and 5, that's totally up to you. Why I'm saying that about catching at certain points is because if you catch your float, say your chart is practically 4 red, 5, not 5, let's go 8, 5, 8, 5. Say that's that part of the chart. In those 8 stitches, you don't always want to catch between 4 and 4. Because if it's 5 rows of the same section block chart, the chart looks the same where it's 5, 8, 5, and you're catching in between the 4 every time, you're going to get what's called an unintentional vertical line. I have an example. So in this, I'll show my examples in a minute. I'm going to show you a portion of his chart, not the whole chart, because I don't want to give away the whole chart because that's just evil and wrong. So, down here, and this is only such a tiny portion of the chart, it's not giving enough away, I don't think. I'll use this sticky note. Sorry, it says Von Vet on it. I'll try to cover that up. Okay. So here is part of that chart. That is a long section of that color, right? Of the gray. And right, the line before that is also a very long section of that same color. I draw in my lines. See my little pencil marks? Try to make that focus, sorry. You can see my little pencil marks. That is where I caught my floats, because I don't want my floats to be in the same exact vertical line. I don't want this float be caught underneath of the same pencil mark float above. Because when you do that, because you're twisting the yarn to catch it, not twisting so much, but you'll have to watch a video on how to do floats and how to catch them to understand what I'm saying there. But you're kind of like twisting them. So you have the color you're working with. He's very annoying today. You're catching it so it's not such a long float, because then it's, I'm not explaining floats very well. Goodbye, bud. But I will show you examples. So on this chart, there was a spot where I had a 6-section float, and I had split it on the one row, on row 1, right in half, 3 and 3. On the next row, it was still that 6-section count of stitches, and I didn't want to catch it at 2 and then 4, because catching it at 2 is just so much work. So I did 6 stitches without catching my float, and you can. I think the interweave article I was looking at, just to get a little bit of guidance before I talk today, talked about you can do almost up to an inch of knitting with that same color before you should catch your float. I feel like on this, an inch of color is like 8 or 9 stitches, and I don't want 8 or 9 stitch length floats. So I didn't do that. He is being really annoying. Yay! Family's gone and the cat's annoying. I love him to death. He went to the vet again to get another IV treatment. They're not teaching right now how to give IVs to cats because of all the COVID stuff. So she just said we could go like every other week because it's expensive to have them do it. And they wanted to do it almost 3 times a week. And I was like, that's just not gonna happen for us. At least show your pretty face, bud. Your angry, pretty face as you're purring away. Okay, thank you. Please go away or I'm gonna shut you out of the room. What a video. Okay, so early on in my knitting foray, I made this for Hazel. Now she's turning 5 soon, and I made this, I mean, she was barely a year. Now this doesn't have a lot of, except in here, right there, you would have long colors. Now what did I do? Let's see. Was I smart about catching my floats? So I was. So I can't show you the vertical lines because I don't have them so much in this, but it's gonna be hard to show you where I caught my floats. So the pink is floating because the sheep is all green. So you can see I caught it here, I caught it here, I caught it there, I caught it there, over here again, over here, over here, over here. So that's showing you that I wasn't catching them on the same stitch, in between the same stitch. So I actually was doing it right when I did this. I wasn't sure what I was doing early on. This is probably one of my first color work pieces. I think it might have been maybe only my second piece I've ever done that was color work. But now I did these hats later and I don't know what I was thinking because I did catch my floats. And it's not like super visible, but this, I don't remember the name of the hat. I'm so sorry. I can put it down below. Okay. See that? Now, when it's not stretched, you can't see it. But when you put it on your head, it's going to stretch some, and you're going to have that little line. I have to pause. Sorry. He likes to lick plastic, and he's licking her vanity leg. I know you could hear that. It picks up like minuscule noises. So every heart, it looks like I did that. I don't know what I was thinking. I really don't know, but you might not be able to see it, but there's like a gap. There's a gap in between that line of stitches. You could really see it on this one closest to my face here. So you need to really be careful. Now I'm going to show you what those look like and how they are stacked on top of one another. So the hearts were gray or brown, whatever color you want to call that. So the back side, you see the floats. See how they're stacked on top of one another? Right on top of one another. Not there, that's in between. Sorry. They are stacked right on top of one another in every heart. What was I thinking? I knew better. I knew better. So my tip, if you have a color work chart you're working, is to put in those little pencil lines so you can remember where you caught the float the last time, and it's not as, you're not trying to remember. So it's easier for me to mark it than it is for me to look at my work and try to remember, oh, I did my float there. Because I also want my repeats to be consistent. So I'm repeating this chart around, I don't know how many times. What is that? How many are on there? At least 10 times, right? So I want my float to be caught at the same point in every repeat of that chart and not have to remember where I caught it the previous round. Because the next round you're repeating the chart so many times, and if you caught it at 2 and then you caught it at 4, and then you go to the next round and you're like, oh, did I catch it at 2? Did I catch it at 4? Did I catch it at 3? I know where I caught it visually. I can see it on my chart. That's where I caught my float. That's my tip. I don't know what I was thinking with this. I brought up 2 other examples. The other example, now I just knit the Bowie mitts not long ago. I've already turned it inside out. But this is the lightning bolt that's on the Bowie mitt with long stretches of orange. I'm sorry, the lightning bolt's orange. It confuses me when I have it turned inside out. So my floats are white, but I caught them not vertically in the same row, and you can very visually see that I did not catch them. I moved it over 1 stitch. It was easy to do this one because you're almost moving 1 stitch over every time before you start your lightning bolt. So if I caught my stitch every 3 stitches, the next row I could still catch it every 3 stitches because my lightning bolt didn't start until the next stitch. So then my float was just moving over 1 if I caught it every 3 stitches. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions about what I'm trying to explain, I will try to find some videos for you or even articles to explain this maybe better than I'm explaining. The other thing I brought, see, the lightning bolt was orange. I don't know what I was... The other example that I brought out, I should say, this one didn't have a ton of where I had to catch floats. Definitely not in this section because you're changing your color every 2 stitches. But in the purple, I had to catch some. And in this bigger section of yellow, I had to catch some. So it doesn't look like I stacked them there either. So I did good. I was paying attention when I was doing this. They're definitely not stacked on top of one another. So I love the way the floats look on the back side of this hat. I think it's beautiful. I think the inside of like stranded color work is really pretty. Even on this, and I'm not even like far. And it just looks neat. It just looks really cool. Okay, so I went on a long rant about that, but I don't have a lot of content, and I felt like I could give you guys possibly a tip about something. So like I said, marking where you put your floats is really, really something I do. I did it with the Bowie mitts to make sure I was consistently not on the same vertical line. The cowl that I made, my hair is like starting to curl, it's drying and it's just being like crazy. The cowl that I made on my Addy knitting machine, I had the auction, and congratulations to Laura. We've already, I still have to mail her project out. I have to mail the cowl out to her, but she was very generous and went above the bid that was the winning bid, and John and I both put $100 towards, so we were able to donate $250 to the NFC Momentum Fund, and that was cool. I mean, I'm really glad that I did it. It would have been cooler if maybe it was just a better thing to auction. I don't know. But it's okay. It's okay. My plan still worked, and I donated money, and we donated money, I should say, collectively, and it was good. It was all good. So yes, thank you, Laura. I will be getting that out to you. I don't think the post office is open on Saturdays here because of COVID, but I'm not sure. I will be taking a long lunch break and doing it Monday or Tuesday and getting it out the door. So in regards to what's happening in the United States regarding race, I have been watching documentaries and stuff on Amazon and on Netflix. I had to write stuff down. I'm really terrible at remembering names of things. So I didn't realize, I was looking through Prime. So Prime and Netflix both have sections that are regarding Black Lives Matter, for Black injustice, and so if you don't know where to start, just start there and find something that piques your interest to just get you started watching. One of the first ones I watched, and I couldn't find the name of the documentary, and I that's the one thing about Prime, on Amazon Prime, it doesn't say recently watched, and it was really annoying because I was trying to find the documentary I watched about, she was transgender Black woman, born male, transgender woman, and she was like born, I'm not quite sure exactly, the 40s maybe, 50s, because now in this time she's pretty up there in age, but she is a huge advocate for transgender Black women and all the crap they really have to go through, not just because they're transgender, but they're Black too, and they talk about injustices in prison systems, and God, I wish I could remember her name. If I can, I will find it and I will put it down below or put it here. Major. Her name was Major. That's all I can remember. I knew it was a different name, and that was her birth name, and I like that. I think that's really cool. I've never heard somebody named Major. So that was very interesting because it was a little more specific in being that it was about Black transgender women. So that was really, really, it just opens up your eyes and makes you like really think about how much they have to go through to even feel comfortable in the world that they live in, and how they want to live based on their feelings, not based on how they were born, so that's hard to explain. Explaining things for me is not my forte. That was good though. So that was one of the first ones that I've watched. Now when I was looking on Prime, I saw I didn't know they made a movie. In 2018, they made the book. It was a book written by Angie Thomas. The Hate You Give is a movie. And I don't know how well it translates from book to movie, but the book was really great. And I think I might end up watching the movie just to refresh my brain. So it is a fiction book, but it's based on real life scenario, really. So it's not specifically like a biography of the girl, but it's based on real life stories of Black people and the shit they have to go through. That's the simple and easy way to put it. So I'm probably gonna watch that. The other thing I watched on Prime was The Untold Story of Emmett Lewis Till. He was 14 years old and killed in 1955 because a white woman lied and said that he did inappropriate things to her. It's just freaking, and she recanted her story years later, and she never got, like, there was nothing ever done to her or the people that killed him. They were scot-free. It's just the injustice of it all is just freaking mind-blowing. So that was really good. Not good. I mean, good is not the right word to use when you're talking about a documentary that covers what it's covering. Just watch it. And then I watched 13, which is a documentary. I think that one's a little older. I think that one came out in like 2016 or 17. And that one talks a lot about, it's a lot about the jail system. They talk a lot about the injustices. I wrote a little note about it. Yeah, focuses on the nation's prison regarding racial inequality. That was my little note. That was also very interesting, and how it related a lot with politics. So that's a really good one to read, considering here in the United States, change hopefully can happen. Hopefully. And then I just finished last night Malcolm X, which was it's like a 6-part documentary series about Malcolm X, which I have never done enough reading. I've heard of who Malcolm X is. I knew a little bit of what he stood for, but I watched this documentary and learned a whole lot more. So I am going to continue to do my reading. Watching is easier for me only because that's my downtime, and it's usually later in the day, and if I listen to a book, I'm gonna fall asleep. So watching stuff on the television helps me educate myself easier. So yeah, I rambled a lot about just these few little things that I had to show. The birthstone cow, the sweater and stranded knitting, which I could have went into more about that because I could have talked about color dominance, but I've already talked about color dominance before, and I don't think I could like link it with the little eye on. I made socks one time and they were color work, and I used one color as the dominant color on one sock and the opposite color on the other sock, and you can tell a difference. I think that's interesting. I think that's very interesting. So that's all I have for you guys today. I have wanted to cast on a bazillion other things, but I haven't because I'm trying to really focus. So yeah. So until next time, happy knitting, and I'll talk to you guys then.